All right. Happy holidays. It is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. If you are listening, welcome to the JudgeMental Podcast. Today, we know you're with your families. It is a high-stress situation. If you're going through a divorce, a custody battle, all that stuff, this is a very, very, very difficult time. And we just kind of want to talk about some of our horror stories and give you some tips, right?
Yeah, and I one time heard the statistic that the night of Thanksgiving is the biggest night for DUIs in the United States.
Absolutely.
Not New Year's Eve or 4th of July, but it's people having to be around family or navigate the family issue and then having some drinks to help deal with that.
Yeah, and everybody's back home. I mean, it's a high-stress situation, and then you couple that with, I mean, honestly, everybody's got family problems. You know, anybody, my mother always told me this, anybody that tells you their life is perfect, those are the craziest motherfuckers out there, okay? Because everybody's got problems. Right?
Yeah.
And life is hard. You know, the human experience is the human experience, but it's quadrupled when you're going through a custody battle and you're used to having, you know, a certain level of like your normalcy is like being with your children or your significant other, you know? And we've got horror stories for today. What's your craziest holiday story?
Oh, good Lord. Oh, you mean from clients or
Yeah,
personally?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, personally, my life's been easy. We pared down the Thanksgiving celebration after a family member or two went to jail one year, and we stopped getting as many people together. And it's been very small and awesome since then. Oh, gosh.
I know. I mean, it's like for days.
Oh. Well, one of the biggest frustrations I ever had was the courts are set up to resolve things slowly, and it's just the way that it happens. And usually when things fall apart regarding the holidays, it's like in the moment, and you can't think it through and plan everything out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people miss out on time with their kids because the courts just aren't built to respond fast enough.
Yep.
But one of the things when I first moved to town and started my family law practice here, I would notice that if you filed something regarding Thanksgiving or Christmas and you filed it September or later, you may as well just give up. It's never going to be resolved, even if it's just something really basic.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't get done. And I remember filing something in the summer, June, July, early August, somewhere like that. We had the hearing. And I was happy. We're going to get this resolved. At the time, we didn't have the presumption. We didn't have the 223 schedule. This was probably 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was just anything goes. Everybody has a different kind of holiday schedule. When the holiday schedule was over, you litigated whose day it was back to the normal schedule. It was just kind of a mess. And I thought we had gotten it done in time. And I remember the holidays came and went. Everything blew up. Thanksgiving, it blew up. Christmas, it blew up. We still had no orders back. And then the judge came in over holiday weekend, and there was an email that went out about it. He was trying to get everything done by the end of the year. And there it is on the 26th or the 27th, I get an order that says who would get Thanksgiving and how Thanksgiving and Christmas would be handled that year. And it came out after the holidays had passed. And
sounds like family court.
you know, when he was writing that and it was dealing with that year, he had to know that those holidays had passed. Like, what was going through that judge's mind getting an order out? And he had signed it on the 26th. It got entered that same day. It wasn't in Jefferson County, so it was in one of those counties where someone just walks it down the hall and gets it entered.
Right.
He knew when he wrote that order and signed it that it was moot at that point.
And that goes to, I think people think, you know, specialty courts as far as like family court and stuff like that they're going to have this like empathy towards families. You know, I really think it's just kind of like robotic in a lot of ways. And you said something that's so on point. Family court is reactive, not proactive.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. So they're going to react to things. And then you're going to have this, oh my God, I didn't see my kid for Thanksgiving. Oh my God, my Christmas was ruined. And the judge is going to be like, well, I can't go back in time and fix it.
No, that's right.
Their mentality.
We can punish people.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But they don't.
But I mean, that's how it's built. That's how it's made. I mean, there are reasons why it can't be proactive. And there have been times where, and this still goes on in other states, and I'm not sure how they do it, where let's say, for instance, when you file a divorce, you'll get an order out that prohibits people from giving anything away or selling a house or selling a car, which is a restraining order.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that. And some judges started doing it here in Kentucky. And honestly, it made cases easier, but it just clearly wasn't legal under the rules, and it got challenged.
I'll tell you right
Yeah.
now, Oldham County, y'all are going to love this. You wanted me to talk about Oldham County. I remember Hugh Barrow arguing this when I was sitting in motion hour
Lord.
about a status quo order. And a status quo order is essentially in Oldham County, the judge used to just immediately enter this order, which you're not allowed to do. And you were arguing, obviously, pursuant to the law, you can't immediately enter a status quo order, especially there's no service. And Judge Goodwin did not love your argument, obviously.
Well, she definitely made some comments after it got struck down and that rule had to change, that I'm not allowed to do that anymore. I'm not permitted. And frankly, I was arguing that as an advocate for my client in that situation, and I was right.
Which is your role.
But at the same time, I knew that made a lot of sense, and it made the practice easier. It saved people a lot of money because people couldn't it gave the judge more power to step in. If they'd already entered that order, they didn't have to go through the initial stage of entering that order before they could find someone in contempt of that order.
Yeah.
It let you preserve the marital assets easier. It was just an overstep, so I had to argue it, and it's
created law. We need to do a breakdown of all of the law that you have created in the family court sphere. We haven't really gone down there. We've done a lot of Adair versus Emberton. I have done nothing. The only thing I've ever done is preserved the issue to allow you to be drunk in public, or not public because your front porch isn't public. Commonwealth versus Anthony Maloney. But anyway, great case.
This is a great case.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that case, and I loved that the court had the guts to stand up for someone who was passed out cold on his own porch in the middle of the day.
Yeah, and the argument that I made at the trial level was that, you touched home base. You made it to mama's porch. It didn't win at the trial level, but the Supreme Court codified that in a published opinion, one of the best clients I ever had. Now, I did some time because the system doesn't work how the system's supposed to. So Thanksgiving, you are imbibing in red wine or your drink of choice. You're stressed to the max. You need to realize that if you are in what they call a high conflict divorce, I understand that verbiage bothers some people, but I am just so sick and tired of being told which words I can and cannot use for every little thing. Regardless, you need to realize that your significant other wants to hurt you by restricting your access to the kids or ruining your holiday. And so you are the one that's in charge of not letting that happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things I talk to clients with children about, if it was going to be a litigated case, it was, and as a practitioner, you knew the warning signs that kids were going to be used as weapons, as collateral in this case, especially with Thanksgiving and Christmas. Different families have different traditions, and there are so many ways that traditions can be changed to where kids can enjoy with both families. And if you started thinking that way before we got right up to it, it made life a lot easier. But it was always that exchange. There's got to be a place that's different than normal, especially when the parties have family that might not be, in the town where they live. And you just know as a practitioner, your holidays were just waiting for your phone to blow up.
Yeah. And my parents were divorced, but it's one of those things, obviously it's a very different time, but you just have to understand that children will become aware of the reality of the situation when they get older.
Yep.
They don't have the mentality, the brain capacity, the ability to understand the difficulty that is life, because they shouldn't. Kids should not have the bandwidth to understand that, right? They're children. And so do not use your children or tell your children what's going on or discuss adult behaviors. If there's one piece of advice I could give you, let kids be kids, don't put adult problems on them.
Yeah. And it's most difficult for the person that's just on the receiving end of somebody who's using the kids to hurt the other side, and that they want to explain why things aren't going according to plan, or why, oh yes, I know I told you that this was going to happen, but this is actually what's going to happen. And you don't want to be the one that disappoints them or the one that changed the plans. But what, at least from, my many, many hours talking with child psychologists and reading on the subject, the kids are going to remember how they felt.
Yeah.
They're going to remember that stress level, and a lot less about, oh, there was a change to the plan and they need an explanation for it, and putting them into the conflict by explaining what's happening, or this is your dad's fault or your mom's fault. She has to have it her way. I'm not the one that's changing this. I just want you to know that actually creates more stress for them.
Yep.
And sometimes you just, for the kids, I mean, sometimes you just sort of have to roll with the punches a little bit.
And you're playing the long game, right? You're playing the long game. You don't win the battle to lose the war. And also just understand you're participating in a war where the collateral damage is your child or children.
Yeah. And know that, I mean, if you're, the plans we're talking about are spending time with extended family, and, it's one of those, one of the few times in the year that a lot of people spend with, multiple of their family members. Those family members will understand. They will know if you have to change the plan, if dinner needs to be moved or anything. You don't want to impose upon them, but people know you're going through this.
Yeah.
I think most people would be amazed that it's just not a big deal for people to change their plans to work around that in order to make sure they get to celebrate with your kids, or it doesn't stress the kids, or that you're not spent, you don't have to miss out on half the meal or be miserable the whole time being stressed about it.
And listen, mother-in-law's gonna mother-in-law. Okay. That's what they do. And it's not your problem anymore. It's not. I mean, just let them, you have to get in that headspace. And I know it's easier said than done, but just know that when you're listening to this, that this too shall pass. Thanksgiving and Christmas might be hard, especially if it's your first year going through a divorce, And we live in a world now in Louisville, Kentucky, where it is not uncommon for family court cases to span 3, 4, 5 Thanksgivings. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So just know that it's just a day on the calendar and that it all will pass. And I do think we get so many messages about people being like, thank you, because no one talks about this kind of stuff. Like, people don't talk about family court. They don't talk about the legal aspect of it. They don't talk about all of that stuff. And it is so emotional. And you got this. Just be thankful that you don't have to live in the same house with that piece of you-know-what anymore.
Well, I think it's more volatile generally because even if you don't have family dynamics that are stressful, if you're hosting or you're having to go and take part in bringing some food, there's just stress involved. People are usually more stressed out, at least leading up to the event. Sometimes people, you get eating and hanging out. Some people, I was included in this group, get to relax then, and it's okay. We've run around, we've gotten the food, we got everything put together. Now we can actually sit and relax. But that's the time when it gets more stressful for some people because you've got the family members that want to talk politics, or you got there's always something that can be stressful. So it just amplifies the little things that an ex might do, or a spouse that you're going through a divorce with might do, that might seem rather innocuous on a normal day, but on a day where you're already stressed out about 3 other things that are going on, it could just And when you go through divorce, the person that you're divorcing is the person that knows the good, the bad, the ugly. They know your buttons. You know what I mean? You're not getting a divorce, or you're not going through a custody battle because you guys are able to communicate well. And so give yourself some grace and just acknowledge that button's going to be pushed, and take the power away would be the best piece of advice that I can give. Now, obviously, I got a mouth on me. You know what I mean? It's easier said than done. So do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, I remember I've represented service members who get back into the States very rarely. They're on, some assignment, someplace like that. And then the spouse would do something and it would prevent them from having getting to have their plan. Like, oh man, I had a service member who really wanted to take the kids to see his family, and the spouse just didn't want the kids to be around that family anymore. And nothing bad had happened, but I remember him making the choice to let the kids, because it was going to be an issue and they couldn't go see his family or do that, to go with their mother to her family, even though he got to come into the States once or twice a year. And it was just something that I know had to have been a miserable decision, but it was the smart thing to do for the kids. But I mean, God, as his counsel, it absolutely broke my heart. And and you could see that it was just, he was playing the long game, but oh, can
And he
you
was putting his kids first.
imagine if you come back to the country from overseas and you've been, yeah, he was sent overseas to places where he couldn't disclose to me and was training people and would be out of communication with everyone. So, I mean, you talk about like really looking forward to time with your kids, and then it gets sidetracked.
And those are the stories that, litigators, we do carry with us. I mean, you can hear, it's weird from a client's perspective, obviously not a therapist. How many times have we talked on this show? Like, I don't know where to hold all this trauma. I don't know how to fix your problems. I got my own fucking problems. But like, there is something that takes an emotional toll. You can hear in someone's voice, like the true pain that they're experiencing. And there's nothing you can do. And the judges, as they should be, they're sipping Chardonnay and, hanging out with their family. And they're not, it is what it is.
Well, in that case that I just spoke about, this next year, the other side had hired an attorney that you and I both think highly of, and had her file something, which, if you're new coming into a case and your client tells you things and you're believing 100% of it, it was legit. It wasn't filed. It wasn't an illegitimate motion, but everyone that knew about the case knew that this is just trying to do the same thing
again
the next year. And it was brought as an emergency, and our judge took it up as an emergency, had our office reach out to me to make sure that I could be there. She wanted to make sure, she didn't say, she wanted to make sure that I could be heard or that could argue. She wanted to make sure I heard what happened, which I found to be weird. So I actually went, at the time, it was before remote appearances.
Yeah.
So I went down to the court. I was out working in the yard because it was one of those warm years in Kentucky. I had a shirt that I was embarrassed about, but I had to race down there. It said "Getting Lucky in Kentucky," and it had holes in it that my friends in DC bought for me when I first moved here. And I got down there, and the judge called it in and just told the other attorney exactly what she thought of the tactics and what was going to happen, and I never even had to open my mouth. She just wanted me to be there so that I could hear the judge say that no matter what happened, it was my guy's holiday and he was spending that time with the kids. And I was just amazed. The judge came to the courtroom to go on the record just to do that. And he got to see his kids. And I walked away with some faith in humanity.
In the system.
Day. Yeah.
Few and far between at this point. The other thing is to document everything. You can keep a journal of what's happening. I think it's so, when you're in your emotions, you're just like, okay, but just make a paper trail. This is what happened on this time. Don't pop off in text messages or app close or any of that stuff. And then also, if you do pop off, give yourself some grace and dial it back in. You know what I mean? Not legal. This is not legal advice in any capacity. This is just our advice on how to get through the holidays, being two divorce attorneys.
And this is, not legal advice, but just good advice in life. If you are in written conversation and say something you should have, don't apologize verbally. Apologize in writing. Say you're sorry. You can say it verbally, but make sure you also say it in the same format that you said what you shouldn't have said, because you know that conversation is going to get shown.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what's the Dorinda from Housewife says: write it, regret it, say it, forget it.
Yeah, no, that's true. But if you do end up, like you mentioned, app close or Our Family Wizard, the parental communication apps that the courts use, if you said something and need to walk it back, probably go ahead and walk it back, in person or over the phone or however you can be more sincere. But
if you can.
If you're allowed to, many you can, but make sure that that's reflected in the record, because you could totally, you could have a conversation that, oh, that's fine. I understand it's a stressful time, whatever. And it's just no big deal. And then a month later, the attorney for the other side gets that and makes something out of it. And
we're the worst.
I've done that before, unfortunately. I mean, if you got it in the written record and you can use it, somebody's going to use it. So just cover all your bases.
This is why I drive a Ford, y'all. So anyway, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your family. By Christmas, you won't have to worry about fighting with your family, because Judgy will be out and you will be able to just sit, have a cocktail, and review every single judge in the state of Kentucky, right?
If you have any experience with them.
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. But if you're going through the system.
And if you have, good Lord, God bless you.
Yeah. All right, well, happy Turkey Day.
Yep. See ya.
We need some justice. My life is fine, justice.
Content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be and should not be construed as legal advice. Engaging with this content does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and the hosts, guests, or their firms. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any law firm, company, or organization. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the information presented. Any reliance on the information in this podcast is at your own risk. Laws are constantly changing, and every situation is unique. You should always seek the advice of a qualified attorney for your specific legal concerns.